Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience, and apologies to the folks joining on live stream. We were working through some audio issues. Should be resolved now, but appreciate you all for being here and for the extra wait time. My name is Maddie Danks. I'm a program coordinator at Harborview Hospital, and I'm a rank and file member of SEIU 925 and a member of Workers Strike Back. Thank you all for coming to our September meeting of Workers Strike Back, and that includes the folks here in person and folks joining us online. This is our first monthly meeting following the rally we held at the DNC just last month and our inaugural meeting back in July. At that July meeting, we had a democratic discussion, debate, and vote, and we endorsed the anti-war, pro-worker campaign of Jill Stein for president. Workers Strike Back has been actively fighting to build for the strongest vote against genocide and for working people. In the lead up to the primaries, we helped build the turnout for the uncommitted primary votes. We helped Jill Stein get on the ballot in states where we have active chapters. We've been proud to stand with Abandon Biden as they renamed themselves Abandon Harris in recognition that Harris's campaign is a continuation of funding and greenlighting genocide as we've seen under Biden. Many of us here today are here today because we feel called to action by the atrocities being carried out by the Israeli state in Gaza. We feel strongly that an ongoing genocide, which U.S. capitalism and imperialism is allowing and funding to the hilt, is unconscionable and requires us to get organized to stop it. Workers Strike Back is dedicating this evening's meeting in honor of the memory of Ezgi Eygi, a Turkish-American citizen and a graduate of the University of Washington, who was murdered in cold blood by the Israeli military in the West Bank just days ago. Ezgi was a dedicated anti-war activist. She was participating in peaceful protests alongside Palestinian, Israeli, and other international organizers to oppose the illegal expansion of settlements in the West Bank and the ongoing genocide in Gaza. For those who are unfamiliar with Workers Strike Back, we are an independent nationwide movement of working and young people organizing on the streets and in our workplaces against the billionaires and their political servants who we see carrying out things like this genocidal war in Gaza. Workers Strike Back is also fighting racism, sexism, and all types of oppression, and calling for a $25 an hour minimum wage, good union jobs for all, and quality, affordable housing and free healthcare for all. Right now, Workers Strike Back is in solidarity with the machinists at Boeing Corporation, who are members of the IAM Union District Lodge 751, who are fighting for a good contract. The union members have just received a tentative agreement that completely fails to meet the cost of living for the workers and fails even to begin to compensate for the horrendous attacks on the workers' pensions 10 years ago. An attack that was carried out by the company with the active support of the Democrats in the state legislature and the Democratic Governor Jay Inslee. Our message to the workers is that if they decide to go on strike, Workers Strike Back will have their backs. In order to win any of the demands we're fighting for, working people need to get organized and build powerful movements, and our movements will need our own anti-war party that represents the needs of working people, not the billionaires.
And I'm M. Smith. I'm also a member of Workers Strike Back. Workers Strike Back was launched by socialist and former Seattle City Council member Kshama Sawant, alongside other socialists, working people, and union members. Kshama and others launched it early last year in order to carry forward the movement building approach that we used in Seattle over the last decade that won so many victories. Kshama was not a careerist politician. As an elected representative of working and oppressed people, she took home only the average wage of a worker in Seattle and donated the rest to a solidarity fund for workers' strikes and social movements. Rather than prioritizing personal, cordial relationships with big business and the Democratic Party establishment, she used her office as a platform to expose the greed of the billionaire class and the betrayals by the Democratic Party politicians and to organize the working class. Using that strategy, we were able to make Seattle the first major city in the country to pass a $15 minimum wage in 2014, 10 years ago. We also won the Amazon tax on the wealthiest corporations to fund affordable housing and unprecedented renters' rights victories, all of which will come under attack if the Democrats on council feel like they can get away with it. Unfortunately, Kshama's decade in office has been the exception to what is on offer as leadership on the left and in the labor movement. And it's very clear that such fighting leadership, independent of the political establishment and capable of organizing thousands and winning working class victories, is in painfully short supply. We've seen how self-described progressives like AOC have completely sold out working people. AOC and other progressives completely refuse to do anything to fight for a $15 minimum wage nationally. And now Democrats on the Seattle City Council are attacking our historic minimum wage victory here on behalf of big business. So far, most union leaders in Seattle have been silent about the Democratic Party's attack on minimum wage workers. It's been Workers Strike Back and rank and file workers and union members who have led on the organizing, and we forced the Democrats to temporarily back off. All of this shows why it's so crucial that we build Workers Strike Back and why you need to join it if you haven't already, and that includes those watching on the live stream today. Most of the labor leadership nationally is also cheerleading Kamala Harris in the presidential election, even though Harris has made it very clear she intends to continue the warmongering and the genocidal policies of the Biden administration. Along with Workers Strike Back and the Jill Stein campaign, Abandon Harris is one of the only organizations in the United States bravely standing against the tide of lesser evilism and declaring there is no lesser evil and there is no gentler genocide. They're leading the charge to say no to the ongoing funding and co-signing of the brutal war on Gaza. They've identified 3 million Arab American voters who they want to organize to abandon Harris. They're serious about strategy and are tactically focusing their efforts on the so-called swing states to make Harris and the Democrats pay the highest possible price for their ongoing support of genocide.
That's right.
Today, we'll first be hearing from Patrick Gibson of Workers Strike Back on next steps for building the strongest possible fight back against the genocide and winning the largest possible vote for Jill Stein. We'll also hear from Abandon Harris activist Rizwan Samad, whom we are very fortunate to have with us this evening, and he will also honor Ezgi's memory. We'll also hear from Kshama Sawant. Then we'll have some time for questions and discussion as a group, followed by reports on some workplace struggles happening right now in and around Seattle. And finally, a chance to sign up for upcoming actions and events. So now I'd like to hand it over to Patrick Gibson. Patrick is a tech worker here in Seattle and a member of Workers Strike Back since its founding last year. Patrick?
Thanks, everyone. I'm honored to be here on the same panel with Rizwan from Abandon Harris. Abandon Harris has taken an important and courageous stand on one of the most important issues facing people who oppose the genocidal war on Gaza in the US today, which is, what do we do about the presidential election? Many workers and young people in the US are seeing that the two major parties are presenting us with two completely unacceptable choices in Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Both are warmongering representatives of the billionaire class, and they've made it clear they plan to continue US military funding and political support for the genocide. The Biden-Harris administration has now sent over $50 billion in military aid to Israel since October 7th, including $20 billion in new long-term weapon contracts since Harris became the nominee just 6 weeks ago. Less than that, actually, a month ago. Though Harris dishonestly claims to support a ceasefire, her actions undermine that possibility in every possible way. She's made it clear she does not support ending military aid to Israel, regardless of over 180,000 Palestinians having died in the genocide in Gaza and the continued escalations in the West Bank and neighboring countries. She's even refused so far to condemn the Israeli military's brutal murder of 26-year-old citizen and peace activist Ezgi Eygi, who we honored tonight. And while Trump cynically tries to use the anger at the Biden-Harris administration to his advantage, we should have no illusions. He's a warmongering, anti-worker billionaire, and he's stated that he would also continue US funding and support for the genocide. Harris was announced as the presidential nominee on July 21st, which is 6 weeks ago now. Before this, Trump was the clear favorite over Biden, who's repeatedly betrayed working people and the promises made during his 2020 campaign, including a $15 minimum wage, a healthcare public option, and canceling student debt. We're now in a different situation, with the switch to Harris clearly energizing the Democratic Party's core. Many Democratic voters who were demoralized are now energized by Harris, and to that point, she raised $500 million in the 1 month after she announced. This had an impact on the protests at the Democratic National Convention, which were significantly smaller due to Harris becoming the nominee. And although this fresh face has energized the Democratic base, the lackluster campaign offers no real policy proposals and no real path forward. Harris is running to be the new warmonger in chief, despite the majority of people in the US opposing this genocidal war. The Democrats are offering no solutions to the struggles of working people as housing, food, and healthcare costs soar. The DNC also included speeches from Shawn Fain, who's the president of the United Auto Workers, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Bernie Sanders. They all once criticized the Democrats from the outside, but now appear happily in the club and abandoning their progressive rhetoric and any idea of fighting for working people. AOC used to protest in Nancy Pelosi's office and joined climate activists on the steps of the Capitol. Now she's serving as an attack dog for the Democrats, including recently against Jill Stein, calling Stein predatory for providing an anti-war, working-class alternative to Harris and the billionaire agenda. Shawn Fain, who led the UAW in their vote calling for a ceasefire earlier this year, has now uncritically endorsed Harris. This complete capitulation of union leaders, progressives, and even so-called socialists inside the Democratic Party is a huge victory for the party establishment and their billionaire backers, and it is a huge blow to the anti-war and the workers' movement. It shows once again why our movements cannot make their home inside the Democratic Party and why the Democratic Party cannot be reformed. We need a new mass party for working people.
That's right.
So the Democratic establishment is in a better position than they were only a few months ago when they were forced to ditch Biden. But it's still a difficult position for them, and recent polls are showing that the initial euphoria around Harris may already be beginning to wear off. The Democrats have been trying to run on vague ideas of hope and change from both Harris and Walz. They want everyone to project their own hopes onto Harris, even progressive voters. But we should see this for what it is. Harris is actually running to the right of where Joe Biden ran in 2020. She's made it extremely clear she will continue to back Israel's genocide to the hilt. She does not support cutting military aid for the genocide. The other positions she's staked out so far are mostly wonky, headline-killing tax policy or attempts to undercut Trump's position by proving she can be even more hawkish on foreign policy or even more brutal in her attacks on migrants. She's taken some pains to explain what she doesn't believe. First, she's made it clear she no longer supports Medicare for all, which is a position she opportunistically adopted when she was trying to undercut Bernie Sanders in 2020. She also no longer opposes fracking now. We should expect the Democrats to raise hopes of a ceasefire in order to disorient the anti-war movement, but we should be conscious that those are likely to be as hollow as the ceasefire rumors that were circulated during the DNC and amounted to nothing. The latest polls show Harris's early lead weakening, with the two candidates essentially neck and neck. A recent New York Times poll shows Trump ahead of Harris by 1 point, 48 to 47%. So the Harris euphoria is beginning to fade, and some of these recent polls show voters saying they don't even know enough about Harris at all. The Hope and Change campaign is beginning to wear thin, and the election currently is too close to call. The possibility of a Trump return to the White House is completely the fault of the Democratic Party for attacking the interests of working people, for breaking their promises time and again, for abandoning Medicare for all and a $15 minimum wage, for doing nothing to relieve the massive cost of living crisis in every part of the country, and for the complete commitment to continue backing the genocidal war on Gaza, in which an estimated 180,000 people have died. It's no wonder that many people are angry and craving an alternative. We can't support Harris or Trump, Both are warmongering candidates of the billionaire class. I agree with what Abandon Harris founder Hassan Abdul Salam said. There can be no talk of a lesser evil in this election because there is no such thing as a gentler genocide. We have to support the strongest pro-worker, anti-war candidate in this race, and that candidate is Jill Stein.
That's right.
She's consistently stood against the war. She was even arrested for doing so. She's running on a strong progressive platform, including a $25 an hour minimum wage, Medicare for all, and free college education. And it's not only that we should vote for Stein ourselves, we also need to fight to build the biggest possible vote for Jill Stein in this election. Getting out the vote for Stein has to be our movement's #1 priority through the first week of November, because this election is our moment to register clearly that we reject these anti-worker, pro-genocide candidates. And we also need to carry forward that momentum after the election. Workers Strike Back is building for an organizing conference in February to continue to build the anti-war movement, the workers' movement, and to fight for a new political party for working people as an alternative to the two warmongering parties of big business. Unfortunately, the reality is that bold leadership who's willing to break with the two parties is very thin on the ground. Instead, we've seen the uncommitted movement's leadership move towards supporting Harris, even without the extremely minimal concession of a Palestinian speaker at the DNC, much less real commitments like an end to military funding for Israel. Many Workers Strike Back members, including lots of us here today, as well as myself, attended the protests outside the DNC in Chicago, where Workers Strike Back was the only left group besides the Green Party themselves willing to call explicitly for a vote against Harris and for Jill Stein. Significantly, Abandon Harris has not buckled under the intense pressure to get in line behind the Democrats. Instead, they relaunched their organization, which was originally Abandon Biden, as Abandon Harris at the DNC protests. And it's very important that they're actively building for the strongest anti-war vote possible in the election and calling for people to vote anti-war to defeat Harris wherever possible. Jill Stein's vote total in 2016 was 1.5 million, which would be exciting to build on. But because of the Harris phenomenon and the capitulation of nearly every left and labor leader, a vote in the millions is no longer the most likely outcome for us. Unless there are new major developments like the anti-war movement uniting around opposing Biden and Harris, we're looking more likely at hundreds of thousands rather than millions of votes. But nevertheless, there's still important opportunities for us to fight for the biggest possible anti-war vote for Jill Stein in November. Abandon Harris has correctly identified the importance of Michigan, where there's a large, concentrated Arab American population, and where over 100,000 people voted uncommitted in the primary. A recent poll of Muslim Americans showed that 29% of them support Jill Stein, with another 16% undecided. In Michigan, 40% of Muslims surveyed are supporting Stein. And that presents our movement with the potential opportunity to defeat Harris in Michigan this November. That would be a major victory for the anti-war movement. It would send a powerful message that the Democrats cannot count on our vote when they're actively attacking our movement and all that we stand for. It's an opportunity to send a historic message that the Democrats cannot actively support a genocide without consequences while breaking all their promises to working class people. It would also show to millions of working people that there are others like them who are searching for an alternative to the two major parties that do not and will not represent us. There are millions of working and young people who are disillusioned with the two parties of big business, and this year, for the first time, recognizing the need to build a new political party for working people, and it is our job to try to reach them. No matter who wins in November, there's not an end in sight to the genocidal war on Gaza, to the brutal inter-imperialist proxy war in Ukraine, or the broader new Cold War between the US and China. Neither party will provide any real gains for working people unless we win them ourselves. And that's why we're calling for an organizing conference in February, after the election to take forward the momentum from this campaign and bring together those who voted against Trump and Harris and who don't have illusions in either capitalist party. Because while we want to use this election to put pressure on the Democrats and Republicans and to build the strongest possible vote for Jill Stein to do that, it's critical that we don't stop in November. The anger that we feel witnessing these continued global tragedies won't end after the election, and we need to build on the momentum of the fight that we'll be waging over the next 2 months. That's why Workers Strike Back is building for this conference in February, to take stock of the election, to democratically discuss the next steps for the anti-war movement and for the workers' movement, and in the fight for a new mass party for working people. We recently updated our list of core demands as Workers Strike Back to include our position against the war. That means our demands now read: workers need a real raise, $25 an hour, good union jobs for all, fight racism, sexism, and all forms of oppression, quality, affordable healthcare and housing for all, free healthcare and housing, affordable housing and free healthcare for all, end the genocidal war on Gaza, no more military aid and no occupation, and no more sellouts. We need a new party. There are layers of young and working people who are looking for a political alternative that offers these things, and they're recognizing it needs to be found outside the Democratic Party. It's absolutely critical that we fight for every one of those people to vote for pro-worker, anti-war candidate Jill Stein in November. She's by far the most serious anti-war candidate, with the Green Party appearing on the ballot for voters in the vast majority of states. And she has, as I said, a strong working class platform. As an aside, when we have friendly relationships in our movements, we can discuss important strategic questions like this openly and honestly. Abandon Harris has taken an extremely courageous stand against, in this election against Harris, and they're willing to openly talk about punishing the Democrats for their warmongering and working to defeat Harris electorally. I think they should take this further. I think they should explicitly endorse Jill Stein, and it's good news that they've said they're now planning to make a decision on an endorsement this month. Because at a challenging time for the anti-war movement, fighting for every vote for Jill Stein is the clearest, most important next step we can point to. This is also an important opportunity for us to be able to talk to people about our broader message, about the need for a new political party for working people, and for a strong, militant labor movement that can serve as its backbone. In Seattle, we'll do the vast majority of our tabling on Capitol Hill and in the U District, where foot traffic is much higher than anywhere else, and we have an established political presence. But we'll also look for opportunities to set up tables in Arab immigrant communities where there are huge opportunities. Between now and the election, everybody should make sure to get out on tables and talk to people on the street about voting for Jill Stein. The next 2 months are a brief window, and we want to take advantage of it as much as we can. On our canvassing shifts, where we talk to people on the street about the election, the war, and voting for Jill Stein, they're 2 hours long. And I know many of us here are aiming to do that every week, volunteering once a week at least until the election, and even more frequently in the final days just before Election Day. Millions of working people and young people desperately need affordable housing and Medicare for all. Millions have watched the Democratic Party make decades of empty promises about the environment, while new climate change points of no return are passed every year. They've seen working people sold out again and again. In just the past 4 years, they've watched Joe Biden end the COVID-era social programs, including the child tax credit, break a potential strike of railroad workers, abandon even a healthcare public option, and break his promise to fight for a $15 minimum wage. Right. They've watched Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez betray working people, transformed into party insiders. And they've taken to the streets and protested against the genocidal war on Gaza, while both parties one-upped each other to prove just how dedicated they are to shipping as much money and as many arms to Israel as possible. Millions of working people are looking for an alternative to the two parties of big business, and this will be an important thing that we discuss at our organizing conference in February. And we have to seize this opportunity, with millions of people done with the two warmongering parties and wondering what to do next, by fighting for every possible vote for Jill Stein over the next 2 months.
Sorry, I got caught up in Patrick's incredible speech there and forgot that I needed to introduce the next speaker. So here I am. Yeah, thank you, Patrick. That was an excellent introduction to what we're going to be discussing today. To add some more color to the conversation and flesh out why it is so crucial that we continue the movement and join forces with the Abandoned Harris folks who have been continuing to put pressure on the Democrats. We have Rizwan Samad, an activist with Abandoned Harris from the Seattle area and a longtime advocate for from the Muslim American community. He stood with Kshama Sawant's Socialist City Council office in fighting to pass a resolution condemning Indian President Modi's right-wing anti-Muslim citizenship law and supported her office's strongest in the nation ceasefire resolution in November of 2023. Like several Worker Strike Back members in Seattle, Rizwan has a personal connection to Ezgi Eygi. We are so grateful to have him here today to speak about the importance of honoring her legacy and by building the strongest possible movement against the genocide in Gaza. Thank you, Rizwan.
Thank you for inviting me here tonight. It's an emotional day for us today. Early this morning, we buried Aisha Noor in Palestine, the West Bank. It's really ironic. The Thursday night, I was talking to my daughter, Yasmin. I said, why Aisha has to go to Palestine? And her answer was very simple. He said, Daddy, just like you went to Bosnia during the war. She's an activist. I didn't have any more questions for her. Early in the morning, my daughter started crying and entering into our room. And as a concerned parent, me and my wife both woke up and she gave the news that Aisha Noor was shot by IDF terrorists and got killed. There's thousands of young children died in Palestine. But I knew Aisha Noor. I knew her husband, Hamid Ali, who frequently visited my home and called me uncle. She went to the same university where we are sitting here. I went to this university. She was alumni of. She was an activist. She went there to protect the farmers. She died behind the olive tree. "21 years ago, another girl, Rachel Corey, died trying to stop the bulldozer to demolish the Palestinian home. These barbaricism has been going on for too long. And it's sad the world is watching. But this time, thanks to social media, And thanks to people like Kshama, Patrick, and all of you, people are waking up and realizing that this is pure evil. Mainstream media used to hide all the information from us. But thanks to these handheld phone, social media, we're getting a news every day. The people are realizing what's really happening. Where is our hard-working tax dollars goes, and what these tax dollars do to kill innocent civilians. Not only Palestine, over 10 million people we have killed in the last 30 plus years around the world. But the young people are waking up and they say no more. No more. Not in our name. I joined the Democratic Party in 1988. I was a lifetime Democrat. I believed in my party. Always supported. One has no mask, one has the mask. Both are very similar to each other. There's barely no difference. But they crossed the line. What they have done in the last 11 months, unconditional support to Israeli terrorist Benjamin Netanyahu, to massacre, to genocide, killing not only 40,000 people, they are close to 180 to 200,000 people. 40,000 people are those which Ministry of Gaza identify and people prayed for them. There are 150,000 who are buried alive underneath the rubble. And most of them are women and children. You know, this is unimaginable. I seen the war. I seen atrocity. I was in Bosnia as an aid worker. I seen suffering of the people. But this suffering is way beyond. Continuously bombing. 2,000 pounds of bomb dropping on the buildings. So far equivalent to 3 nuclear bombs. You know, as a Democrat, I really believed in my party. And I said, I'm going to call. I went to Patty Murray's office. I cried over there with tears. But their deaf ears didn't pay any attention. Just made an empty promise. I went to Susan Delbeni's office. Wrote hundreds of emails. But this hardcore Zionist lover just keep making excuses. I went to Adam Smith's office, AIPAC lover. Nothing. They just cold-blooded killers. They sold their soul to AIPAC. Then I started studying a little bit more. And then I see top 10 Biden's advisor right-hand man, hold dual citizenship, Israeli and American, including Tony Blinken. So who you are going to represent? America or Israel? So we decided we have to do something. A friend of mine, Dr. Hassan, last trip to Israel, for no reason, he got arrested, handcuffed, stripped, kept 12 days in solitary confinement, without food. The man is a professor, law degree from Montreal, New York, NYU, his PhD. He did research from Harvard University, scholar. And when he came back and told his story, he said, we have to do something. So we started the movement called Abandon Biden. We paid a lot of pressure, and the devil decided not to run. But then we got another big devil, Harris. And I had the honor of meeting Dr. Jill Stein on our press conference in Chicago. And we decided firmly that we are going to abandon Harris. And we will support Dr. Jill Stein. We cannot every 4 years get into this trap. Don't vote for the lesser evil. You have to vote for the lesser evil. Don't vote for the bigger evil. Evil or evil, it doesn't matter. There's a lesser or more. They both are evil. They both have been bought by the APAC. There's not much difference. You know, my friend Kshama, 10 years ago, when some of my friends mentioned to me there's a lady named Kshama Sawant, I said, I heard of her. And then when she started doing these amazing things, $15 minimum wage. The city is a rich city. People must get $15. And then she introduced many humanitarian bills. The Seattle City Council against many evil things which are going on around the world. You know, as an activist, when I was doing demonstration here, and one professor started telling me, you are anti-Semite. I said, I'm myself Semite. How can I be anti-Semite? I'm not anti-Semite. I'm not anti-Jew. I'm not anti-white. I'm not anti-black. I'm anti-injustice. You know, if you see injustice, activists get up and he do something because he has a good soul. You don't need an organization, you don't need a party, you just do the right thing. So my appeal to all of you guys, do the right thing and don't give up. Don't think that your vote is going to be wasted. You must vote and keep fighting and keep fighting, and one day we'll prevail. You know, my friends said most of the thing prior to me. So I'm not going to take much of you guys' time. But Albert Einstein said something very special 70 years ago. It was good then and it was good today. He said the world will not be destroyed by those who do evil. The world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything. So please, thank you all for coming, and thank you for inviting me here. And please, make sure. Tell your neighbors, tell your friends, we are going to abandon this woman. We are going to abandon her. And this is a blue state. We're going to turn into Jill Stein state. Thank you.
Thank you, Rizwan, and thank you, everyone here and everyone watching on the live stream. I want to announce that we have 250 people who are watching online, in addition to those in this room. Now, I have the pleasure of introducing former Seattle Council member, current host of the On Strike video broadcast, and founding member of Workers Strike Back, Kshama Sawant. Almost everything that she achieved in her decade of running for and holding office, from running and winning 4 times as an open socialist independent of the Democratic Party, to win the first $15 an hour minimum wage in a major U.S. city, winning a tax on Amazon and the top wealthiest corporations in Seattle to fund affordable housing, to defeating a corporate-backed recall effort in a special election during the holidays. Everything she took on was said to be politically impossible, until she did it. Her tenure in City Hall changed what millions of working people in Seattle, across the country, and around the world understand to be possible, and she raised expectations for what a representative of working people should be doing. Kshama's incredible track record is because she has the courage to stand up to the political establishment and the confidence that if you tell the truth to working people and invite them into the political process to fight for their interests, they will do so. And that power, the collective power of working people, is what can fundamentally change what is possible to accomplish in the political arena. Please welcome Kshama Sawant.
Good evening, everyone who's here in person and watching on the live stream. Thank you to Patrick and Rizwan, and also Maddie and M. Last week, the Israeli military brutally murdered Seattle resident and recent University of Washington graduate Aisha Ezgi Eygi while she was protesting against the illegal expansion of settlements in the West Bank and the genocide in Gaza. Ezgi was intentionally murdered by the Israeli military with a shot to her head. I knew Ezgi personally, as Rizwan did. She and I were in the same socialist organization for several years as many other of my fellow Workers Strike Back members. When she was 18, she went to Standing Rock as part of our socialist delegation in solidarity with the movement against the Dakota Access Pipeline in the dead of winter. My last conversation with Ezgi was only a couple of months ago at another Workers Strike Back meeting like tonight's at the University of Washington, right here. We spoke about her involvement in the campus anti-war protests, the strategy for the anti-war movement, about the need to vote against both the warmongering candidates in this election. Our deepest condolences to Ezgi's family. This is an enormous loss for all those who knew her and for our movement. As Ezgi herself would have said, the media attention her killing has received, as opposed to the 200,000 Palestinian deaths, is because she was an American citizen. The best way we can honor her memory is by organizing to end the genocide. But at this moment, organizing against a genocide has to mean taking a stand against genocide in the US presidential election, which has to mean rejecting both the warmongering candidates, Harris and Trump, and their warmongering parties of genocide, the Democrats and Republicans. Because what stands out is that even this brutal murder of an American citizen has not slowed the advance of the bloody policies of the Biden-Harris administration 1 inch. The horrific landscape in Gaza and increasingly in the West Bank is unspeakable. It has advanced more rapidly than perhaps any genocide of this scale in human history. In less than 1 year, an estimated 10% of the population is now dead, entire bloodlines wiped out. Alongside the bloody carnage is a shocking destruction of infrastructure of every aspect, from roads to residential buildings, from hospitals to universities. This has itself claimed tens of thousands of lives due to lack of water, food, sanitation, and mobility. And make no mistake about the objectives of Netanyahu and the Israeli ruling class. This is about flattening Gaza and the West Bank on such a scale as to make it unlivable for those Palestinians who survived the genocide. Some have even speculated that it is an attempt by the Israeli ruling class at a final solution of their genocidal ethnic cleansing project. And the Israeli ruling class have certainly done or said nothing to prove otherwise. Democratic Party leaders and leaders of organizations that are tied at the hip to the Democrats, including the labor leaders who are cheerleading Harris, have over many decades used the slogan "Never Again" in reference to genocide. They don't have the right to use this slogan. They have no right to talk about Ezgi. They have lost all credibility, all authority, all believability to speak of the needs of the oppressed. This party has always been a rotten, warmongering party of the billionaire class. It is now morally and politically bankrupt in every sense of the word. The blood of Aisha, Ezgi Eygi, and of the 200,000 Palestinian lives lost in this genocide are all over the hands of Harris, Biden, and the whole Democratic Party, as it is all over their system as well, their system of capitalism, which, as Karl Marx said, comes dripping from head to foot from every pore with blood and dirt. As for working people and the oppressed, we can never support the Democratic Party again. This starts now, and in fact, it should have started a long time ago. The bare minimum that can be done at present in order to stand against genocide is to vote against both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and to vote instead for Jill Stein. We are called on to do much more than that. As those of you in this meeting will know, AOC recently attacked Jill Stein on social media in an utterly shameless video. AOC, who herself has blood on her hands by disgustingly backing first Biden and now Harris to the hilt, called Jill Stein predatory. We should not be surprised. This tells you all you need to know about AOC at this point. She has herself become a thoroughly predatory figure. From running as a self-described workers' representative and quote-unquote democratic socialist, she is now an unapologetic attack dog for the Democratic Party and, in reality, the billionaire class. And this is after she completely abandoned her own promises to fight for Medicare for all, a $15 minimum wage, and defend the same working people she completely betrayed, including by becoming a strikebreaker against the railroad workers. And now she's defending genocide by defending Harris. That's exactly what she's doing. It is fitting, in a way, that if there was any remaining idea that the Democrats could be reformed from the inside, that AOC herself would be the final nail in the coffin of that utterly failed strategy. It is beyond ironic and shameful that this same Democratic Party, which once ruthlessly attacked independent left candidate Ralph Nader, some of you are too young to have known this, but it's a fact, that they once ruthlessly attacked independent left candidate Ralph Nader for allegedly helping to bring George W. Bush and Dick Cheney to power. That same party is now celebrating Dick Cheney's recent endorsement of Kamala Harris as though it were the second coming. And it shouldn't be surprising though to us really, because this is also the same Democratic Party that embraced George W. Bush's carpet bombing of Afghanistan and Iraq, just as they now embrace genocide in Gaza. This is the same Democratic Party that fiercely drove forward the neoliberal bipartisan onslaught against working people over decades, including during the Clinton and Obama administrations. I said that voting against Harris and Trump is the bare minimum that working people can do who oppose this genocidal war and the rest of the bloody anti-worker agenda of the billionaire class. What are the next steps? To echo some of the points that Patrick made, we need to fight for every single vote we can for Jill Stein in every state, not so-called safe states, but every single state. Just today, the Council on American Islamic Relations, the nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization, released some results from its August presidential election survey of American Muslim voters. Jill Stein is polling ahead of Harris in 3 crucial swing states. Stein is polling at 35% in Arizona, at 40% in Michigan, and at 44% in Wisconsin. And we have to be clear. I have heard some people in the Green Party say that we can turn Michigan green, by which they imply that she can win the majority of the votes as compared to Harris and Trump. We have to be clear, that is not what's on the horizon, but what is completely achievable and is absolutely worth fighting for is to defeat Harris in Michigan. It is crucial that we speak the truth about what is possible this year, because if we don't, there is a real danger that the same results on election night that could be the energizing basis for our organizing conference in February could instead be greeted with a feeling of demoralization. We have to avoid that potentially fatal mistake, and that is why it is important for us to characterize our battle lines very, very accurately. We are talking about, as Brother Hassan Abdul Salam, founder of Abandon Harris, has said that we want to defeat Harris in Michigan. It is the most important state in this election, and we need to send the clearest possible message to the warmongering, genocidal Democratic Party by doing everything possible to defeat Harris in Michigan. The line of history runs through Michigan. We need to be on the correct side of history, and we need to bring along as many people as possible to stand with us on that side. On the side against genocide and imperialist war, on the side against the anti-war billionaire agenda. We need to do this systematically by building mass rallies in Michigan and in other states, including here in Washington. We need to carry out systematic get-out-the-vote operations in key states, especially the swing states. Workers Strike Back will be doing one here in Washington state and strongly supporting efforts in Michigan and other swing states. We need to publicly and courageously stand up against all the attack dogs, and there will be a lot more attacks by allegedly progressive figures like AOC. The Democratic Party's dogs of war are just getting started. We need a new mass party for the working class and for the oppressed. And we will never get there by backing the warmongering parties of the billionaire class in election after election. I also agree with Brother Hassan and others who have said that there can be no talk of quote-unquote lesser evil in this election because, as he put it, there is no gentler genocide. Ezgi would have testified to that if she were here with us, as she would have been if Biden and Harris had cut off all military funding to Israel and ended the genocidal war. My organization, Workers Strike Back, is hosting multiple meetings this coming week in Kansas City, Chicago, and Boston. Please contact us to register for any of these events. Those of you who are here, of course, you should come to the Seattle Action Conference on September 15th, where we will be continuing our organizing to defend the $15 an hour minimum wage and to stand with the Cherry Street Coffee House workers who just went on a courageous one-day strike on Friday. Those of you who are watching on the live stream, we are going to be having in-person meetings this coming week in Kansas City, Kansas City and Boston, and in Chicago on October 1st. Please contact us to register for any of these events. Workers Strike Back is also, as was mentioned, calling for a mass organizing conference next February after the election so that we can take forward the momentum of what we are doing now. We build on it and fight to end the genocidal war, to fight for real gains for working people and the oppressed. We need to get far better organized so that we can tap into the enormous potential power that working people have, and it is enormous, to fundamentally change society. Before I finish, I want to say a few things about the contract struggle at Boeing. As Maddie mentioned, we understand that there is a serious debate taking place within the Machinists Union, IAM District Lot 751 at Boeing, which is the International Association of Machinists, that many of the members of the union are deeply disappointed at the recent contract offer and feel it goes nowhere far enough to address the impact of inflation on wages or the catastrophic losses from the past contracts, including on pension and healthcare, which, as Maddie mentioned, were possible only because of the active and public collusion of the Democratic-dominated state legislature and Democratic Governor Jay Inslee. We want the workers at Boeing to know that if they decide to go on strike, we will have their back. Solidarity.
Thank you, Kshama, and thank you to all our speakers. This isn't just a place where we want people to come and listen to ideas. We also, the point of having these monthly meetings is for us to all engage. As workers, as working people, as members of the working class, we have an incredible role to play in the fight back against this genocidal war in Gaza. We have time set aside for an open discussion. Because we are also live streaming this event, we will ask folks to come on up to the podium when you have either a question or a contribution that you would like to include in the conversation. We do also have some optional discussion questions. These are just things that we think are really important to be grappling with, and questions that we'd love to hear feedback on from folks who are joining us today. The first of those is, what are some concrete steps that we can take in our schools, communities, workplaces, and unions to build the strength of the anti-war movement? Second, what would it look like over the next few months? What achievable goals can be set for that movement through Election Day? And lastly, what are some lesser evilist arguments you find yourself struggling to respond to? I will also be walking around and tapping people who raise their hands interested in getting in on the conversation. But if you would like to speak, please raise your hand. Okay, awesome.
Introduce myself or just Sorry. Okay, my name's Kevin Hopkins, retired union printer, graduate of UW, which was self-financed, and my question is, can as sort of a UW community, including the alumni, can we organize some kind of either leafleting at Husky games or just spreading the word about our fellow alumni who was murdered, and making the connection between the UW community and the struggle for Palestine. And I don't know how much energy there is in support of that, but I would like to throw that proposition out.
Hi everyone, my name's Amber and I'm a member of the Green Party, and I just moved to Washington State, being in the Green Party in the state of Minnesota, and I just want to thank the panel so much. It's so good to hear this, and I am so enamored of Jill Stein and Bruce Ware, our presidential, vice presidential candidates, and it's so nice to actually hear fellow people actually talk about these issues, and it's so nice to hear this, and I just want to say thank you to everybody.
Let's see, where's the mic on this thing? Oh, okay. Thank you. My name is Karen Olson. I've lived in Seattle for over 30 years, and I attended UW for just 1 year, 1987 and 88. Kind of a fiasco, but I fell in love with Seattle at the same time. But anyway, I'm trying not to ramble too long, but one thing I don't hear very much of in political discussions is the fact that there's a strong, barely disguised undercurrent in this country, throughout the country, of what you might call religious fundamentalist ideas. And I don't say this to disparage anyone's religious beliefs, but for a long time now, in certain belief systems, can you all hear me? In certain belief systems, there's been this strange idea that I've heard much of my life, saying that we absolutely must support Israel because God will come down here and zap the whole bunch of us if we don't. And this is kind of like a misinterpretation of a biblical passage in Genesis, where God is telling Abraham, I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. But that, I don't think that really necessarily referred to the modern state of Israel or whatever, especially not the current government. But people have this strong fear of criticizing Israel or its government because of this belief that they've grown up with. So many Americans are. I mean, I went to college with people who literally believed that, and who literally believed that it was said somewhere in the Bible that the U.S. and the former Soviet Union were going to get into it in a nuclear war. I mean, seriously, it's like, I knew people who personally believed that. Then my question is there a strong awareness among political progressives of the influence of fundamentalist thinking, right-wing reactionary religious thinking of whatever denomination or belief system, and the influence it has even over the government? I mean, I think the Biden and Harris have a lot of people whispering in their ears very similar things that is somehow like it's going to be some kind of bad luck if they fail to support Israel no matter what they do. And that there's long been a kind of taboo against criticizing Israel, even their government, because of this strange superstition. But anyway, I don't want to ramble on too much, but I was just wondering if because I don't hear this discussed much in political circles, is the influence of the kind of or magical thinking or fundamentalist thinking or strange ideologies from misinterpreted beliefs. Anyway, thank you all for being here. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alex Murillo Sobrano. I'm 16, so please forgive me, I'm still learning. Now, this is a question for Kshama Sawant. You mentioned in your speech that you were wishing to see a Michigan way where Jill Stein had a lead over Harris. But not a green Michigan. So I was wondering, because of spoiler effect, that mean seeing red Michigan?
Hi, I'm Carly. I'm a member of Workers Strike Back. I wanted to come up here both to sort of, I guess, ask a question as well as answer the question at the same time. So one of the discussion questions that our Workers Strike Back members brought up was, what do we do in the coming months for the most success? We hear a lot of talk about lesser evilism. I personally get the question when I was doing some tabling last week of, okay, if we pull votes away from Harris, then what happens when Trump wins? And who's going to be responsible for that? And those are really great questions, and we get them a lot. I'm going to echo everything that Kshama has said and everything that our other panelists have brought up, in that evil is evil, period. And I know that for some people, it kind of feels like, oh, but there's like one evil that's worse than the other. At Workers Strike Back, we're definitely looking more as this vote for Jill Stein and this presidential election as sort of a movement in the right direction, a revolution of people that are saying, we reject this two-party system. We're done with the Democrats. We're done with the Republicans. We need something else. We need something that works for working people. We need something that's anti-war. And we can't we can't go on like this anymore. And so that's why we've also encouraged multiple times that it doesn't stop in November. This is our first step. This is getting people excited and organized. We're going to be having and calling for and organize a conference in February as a way to sort of get people together and continue this momentum. This is just the first step. So that's all I wanted to say about that.
I just want to answer to you. People come to us as Muslims. They say, if you're not going to vote for Harris, then Trump, who did the Muslim ban and he's evil and he's this and that. So my answer to them, genocide is happening right now. I'm not going to wait for the hypothetical genocide. Okay, what he's going to do? He's going to throw more bombs? They already demolished every single universities. They demolished every single hospital. So don't get into trap of this fear-mongering techniques that, we have to vote for our own conscience. So next day when you get up and see yourself in the mirror and see, I did not vote for neither of these evils. You gotta live with yourself. Don't get into this trap. I tell my Muslim friends, we survived 4 years. We will survive another 4 years. But we have to continue fighting back these evils and grow our crowd bigger and bigger. And one day we will prevail. Thank you.
I am Shirley Henderson. I am also a member of Workers Strike Back. And I just wanted to echo what a lot of speakers on the panel have said and what others have already come in on as far as what are the concrete steps that we need to do to end this genocide, right? This genocidal war is obviously, it's not working to speak nicely to the Democrats or to, wait around for them to possibly get a conscience, right? Clearly we need to escalate. We need to increase pressure on them. And one of the things that, as Patrick was saying, when we went to the DNC, we were the only left group calling for a concrete next step. And instead of just having radical sounding language that has no vehicle to apply pressure to either of these warmongering parties, it's really crucial that we build for the strongest vote around Jill Stein. And I think there's concrete things that we can do to going into this school year. Obviously, encampments have already started back at universities, and I think it could be really powerful to have these encampments and high school walkouts around a candidate, right? That's okay, we're not just saying we want to call for an end to the war. We also want to back the strongest left candidate, which is Jill Stein. And using that platform of this vote that is inspiring rather than demoralizing, as Kshama said, instead of just sitting home and not voting because you're disgusted by this war, you can absolutely cast a vote for Jill Stein, and we utilize that to build so that whoever is elected, we are on the strongest footing to fight back, to continue to push to end this war. There's things that we can do, like putting forward union resolutions to rescind endorsements of Harris, putting forward ceasefire resolutions within your union. And we have, Workers Strike Back has sample resolutions that people could use if you are in a union in order to put these forward. Obviously, the labor movement has a big role to play here, right? Boeing machinists right now with this turmoil that they're going through. Boeing was providing weapons, providing some of the armaments for Israel. So it's like there are ways that the labor movement could absolutely play a major role. And I apologize, I'm a little scattered. It's been a long weekend of working, so I'm not totally coherent, but hopefully I'm making some sense for folks. But one thing that I did want to talk about as far as the lesser evilism arguments, I think the most salient is coming back to the fact that the more that we can get organized, and I know that people have talked about our February organizing conference, but we can't just keep cutting ourselves off at the knees. We have to utilize this moment to really build an alternative. And that's what we're doing right now with this Vote for Jill Stein, with this organizing conference, is starting to build the infrastructure for an alternative to fight back against these attacks that we know are going to be coming, regardless of who gets in office. As many of the panelists have already said, both parties are complicit in this genocidal war. And so we have to build for that fight back. And I think anybody who's in this room who is disgusted, who is absolutely wanting to get organized, you should join our tables to get out the vote for Jill Stein. You should absolutely become a member of Workers Strike Back if you're not already, because this is a vehicle. This room, this discussion that we're having right now, this is a vehicle, and this is what organizing looks like. And so I would encourage anybody who's not a member of Workers Strike Back, who's on live stream or who's in this room tonight, you should join Workers Strike Back. Thank you.
My name's Alice Green. I am a longtime Seattle Green Party member and eco-socialist. When AOC said, "Where's the Green Party? We're here every 4 years." Well, guess what? We have been pushed out of a political voice, and a lot of us are in Veterans for Peace. We're in Medicare for All. We're in renters, rent control. We're in, I can't even think of 350 Seattle. We are like a herd of cats, but we do exist. I love that Kshama has come on board and might give us a little organization, and I love that we're getting a little bit lit up. But we are out there. Traditionally, we need a consolidated left. We need to consolidate left power. We used to call the Republicans the party of Wall Street and the Democrats the party of war, but now they are the duopoly of war and Wall Street. And that's not a way to run an economy and to run a society. And as a nurse, I can't even imagine, because I can imagine, I have OR thoughts in my head, amputating children with no anesthesia, the amount of misery that this has caused. If that is not a red line, what the fuck is? They could have and it's like lie after lie. Student loans, they could have codified Roe versus Wade, but they didn't. They could have done so many things that they lied about. And all we have to say now to them is fuck around and find out.
Hi, my name's Amber King. I'm a Republican Democrat. I have worked many, many years here in Seattle and beyond to change the two-party duopoly. They were forged of the same coin, and I'm here to issue a bit of a warning. And I'm also running for Snohomish County PUD position 2, if you're in that area. But we have a bigger war that's happening, and that is the war on the American people. We are the most propagandized country in the world, and with news The information and the rhetoric being posted, being fed into households every single day is destroying the fabric of what it means to be an American. And until we start recognizing what that means, what that looks like in your everyday lives, we're not going to see when the left-right paradigms start merging into the same lane. And that's happening every single day. And we're watching right now a nation of children being murdered. There was 1 million people marching in London last weekend. And we can't barely fill a room anymore in Seattle. We have a lot of work to do. And it starts by talking to your children. It starts by talking to your children's friends. It starts by talking to your neighbors. Make sure you know your neighbors, not by what signs in their yard or what they do or what you think they do. We have to build the fabric of our society back because they've intentionally destroyed it. And it doesn't matter left, right, patriot, progressive. Every one of those labels is meant to be manipulated and changed on a dime, should they choose it. We're here hearing Russiagate 3.0 again. Why? Because it worked so damn well the first time and the second time. They're going to do it again. And until we start recognizing these same rhetoric over and over again, our country is in danger. We are on the brink of absolute financial collapse, and nothing is being done about it. The technology and technocracy, most of which comes from Washington State, is being deployed around the world to entrap and enslave us. We won't be workers anymore. We will be slaves, and that is by design. That is by design by the same people dropping bombs. And we have to start making those connections and changing the things we do every day. You vote every single day. Every single day, a barcode is scanned, a purchase is made online. That is voting every single day for a company, a corporation, a set of ideals, a list of shareholders, mostly BlackRock, mostly State Street, mostly Vanguard. Until you start cutting them out of your everyday lives and recognizing them in your daily purchases, nothing will change in this country. So I really want to urge, the things that we have been fighting for are not the same things anymore. Medicare for all right now is a way to enslave people. Why? Because they're going to take every ounce of your data, your genome, and it's going to be churning over in the Eastern Washington data center so it can be bought and sold and traded. Your life, your information, what it means to be human. Bought, sold, and traded on the minute, on the dime. Future human commodity. It's happening right now. They're planning for it. The infrastructure is there. And destroying countries and rebuilding them in their image, like what's happening in Ukraine, is exactly what they're doing. So I just urge you to please see through the labels, see through the party dynamics. We have to make things different. And it starts with clean air, clean food, clean water, the ability to live a happy, healthy life and work hard and survive. And right now, that is all in danger. So I just urge you to please try and see where this is happening in your life and where you can make a difference.
Hi everyone, my name is Josie. I'm a member of the Washington Federation of State Employees, which is under AFSCME. I'm a member of AFSCME Council 28, which is one of the top 3 biggest unions in the country. The labor movement has a massive role to play in ending this genocide, in putting pressure on the Democrats, and building with the anti-war movement to stop military funding to Israel. AFSCME gives hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to Democrats every year, every election cycle, and yet the majority of our locals have passed ceasefire resolutions across the country. We also saw this with UAW, one of the largest unions in the country, passing a ceasefire resolution and then turning around and immediately endorsing Biden and then immediately endorsing Harris. It's really, as Kshama was saying, it's really a disgrace that these unions are using phrases like never forget while they're clearly just perpetuating this long history of siding with the establishment. The Rescind-Harris resolution that Workers Strike Back has written is a critical way that we can push back not only for unions to actually take up a fight against this genocide, but also to fight for democratic control and participation within our unions. You know, AFSCME passed this resolution. No one asked me. I took no part in that. And I assume many of us have experienced the same thing. I think we should be, really clear that these resolutions likely won't pass because they are a direct attack at the establishment. But it's really important that I think that we start having these conversations and really pushing our unions and pushing the labor movement to actually fight for working people and end this genocide and stop military funding to Israel.
Hi y'all, I'm Dominic Wolfgang Wallace. I'm a member of Workers Strike Back. I'm going to try to keep this brief because I think we're running out of time, but I wanted to respond to some of the discussion questions that were posed. There was this ask about achievable goals we can have for a movement in this current election. I think that involves, what working in the states that are polling well for Jill Stein currently. That was Arizona, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and I don't know any of our viewers at home who aren't Workers Strike Back members but might be in those states. I especially think it would be great to have y'all joining Workers Strike Back so we can organize some larger movements in those states. This also brings me to a question the young man in the back asked about, does it mean like a red Michigan when we talk about not wanting a green Michigan? I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, Kshama, but that is what she meant. I think when Kshama speaks on not wanting a green Michigan, it's because the type of third party we advocate for as Workers Strike Back would be one with a working class orientation and class struggles approach, which the Green Party in its current form isn't really central to its platform. Although I will say Jill Stein's current campaign this time does start to have that character, hence why we are so eager to endorse her and the ballot access she brings. I also do want to talk about lesser evilism because this is something that we run into at tables. We do all the time. The biggest argument I get is about the real tangible threat Trump plays in getting in office again, which I absolutely don't think we should be underselling. But the crucial part of it is that the way that the far right is able to build is that we have Democrats in office who will betray their promises made to working people. I remember literally last election cycle, we were told, let's vote for Biden so that we can beat Trump and then it will all be over. And he was leaving office as one of the most unpopular presidents there has ever been. And now he's back because Biden was terrible. I'll leave it on that. Thank y'all.
It was good that the question came up about a red Michigan. I think that is basically the same sort of argument we're going to hear through these next 2 months is the idea that a vote for Jill Stein is a vote for Trump, and I think we have to completely reject that. Workers Strike Back doesn't support either Harris or Trump. And the point here is to actually build for the strongest possible vote for someone who is against this war and who is against the agenda of the billionaire class. And that's what we need to do. And the reason the Democrats have a danger of losing Michigan and losing these other swing states and losing the election, as others have said, has everything to do with the agenda they have carried out over many decades. It has everything to do with backing a genocide in Gaza. If they lose, it is completely on them. It is not on people who vote for Jill Stein. And I also agree with how Hassan put it. You can't talk about a lesser evil in an election when we're talking about an administration that is backing a genocide to the hilt. You can't talk about that. It is completely not something that we can support. But the truth is that we can't support the rest of their agenda either. The Democratic Party is in no way, shape, or form a party for working people. It is not a party for the oppressed. It is a party for the billionaire class. And the reason that they're in danger of losing is not actually mainly over Gaza. The reason they have a chance of losing is because working people are fed up They are really angry at what's happened over these last 4 years. They are really angry about the cost of living crisis. They are really angry about the broken promises, and they're really angry at the progressive Democrats who completely sold them out also. They are completely despondent about that, many of them. And many of them are considering voting for Trump, who enthusiastically voted for Bernie Sanders a few years ago when Bernie Sanders was running on a working class platform, rather than backing a president who is unapologetically serving the interests of the billionaire class. So that's how we got here. That's how we got here. It has nothing to do, actually, with Jill Stein. Although it's really good that Jill Stein is providing a left anti-war alternative in the context of all these attacks on her, that she's doing it anyway. And so what we need to do is not to be apologetic about our votes. We need to be absolutely enthusiastic about organizing as many votes as possible, including in the swing states. And I absolutely agree. A defeat for them in Michigan would be a huge step forward for the anti-war movement and for the working class. It would show there are consequences. And if she doesn't want to lose in Michigan, if the Democrats don't want to lose in the swing states, they have a very clear option in front of them. They can start representing the interests of working class people, and they can make it clear they won't back military aid for this genocide in Gaza. It's that simple.
Hi, my name's Kaylin. I'm a member of Workers Strike Back. Calvin made a lot of really fantastic points right there, including a lot of the points that I wanted to make. I think, do I want to see a red Michigan? Do I want to see Trump win anywhere in any state? No, obviously not. I don't want Trump to win anywhere. But what I want even less, and what I think we absolutely cannot afford, is to keep failing to build an alternative to the two parties of big business who are both not only backing the genocide to a hilt, but completely failing working people in the U.S. That's the reality. We have only two parties in the U.S., and they both serve the interests of the bosses, the interests of the shareholders. They both serve the interests of maximizing profits for not even just the 1%. It's like the 0.01%. That's why they don't give a shit about climate change. That's why they both break strikes and attack the minimum wage, just like the Democrats are doing right here in Seattle, right now, in the midst of a cost of living crisis. And that's also why they couldn't care less about the human cost of their foreign allegiances. It's not about democracy. It's not about human rights. It's about profit and maintaining their share of the global profits, not letting their imperialist rivals like China or Russia outcompete them for access to global profits. That is the logic of capitalism at the end of the day. And any party that exists to defend and serve the interests of the capitalist class, the bosses, the shareholders, is going to be a warmongering party. It is not going to draw a red line at genocide. It is not going to draw a red line at anything other than profit. That is the logic of capitalism. And we need an alternative. We need a party for working people, for the 99.99%, for children, for climate, for peace, and for a future on this planet. And we don't have any time to waste in starting to build that party. We don't owe our votes to anyone who is making billionaires, and this is a quote I found in an article, euphoric about fundraising for her presidential campaign, when we're in the midst of a cost of living crisis, when millions of Americans can't afford health care, can barely make their rent, can't afford childcare, and can't get by on just one full-time job. We don't owe our votes to anyone who doesn't give a shit about our lives or the lives of how many tens of thousands of children in Gaza. The Democrats are not entitled to any of our votes. We need to build the strongest possible vote for Jill Stein.
Thank you, Kaylin, and thanks to everybody who spoke. That's all the time that we have for discussion. I do want to give a few minutes to Kshama to close up this part of the discussion, and then we have a couple of additional speakers. And I wanted to also announce that we have now almost 300 people on the live stream, in addition to those in the room today. And I want to remind everyone to go to workersstrikeback.org, sign the petition, sign up to become a member, subscribe to On Strike, get involved in this movement to fight for everything that we're talking about here today. Kshama, go ahead.
I also, just to add to what Em said, especially for those of you who are watching on live stream, and especially if you're on the East Coast or even in the Central Time Zone and it's very late, I urge you all to stay, because right after me, we'll have a Boeing Workers speak who's here with us, and that's very, very important because it's potentially a major strike action coming up. Kaylin and Calvin addressed the question really, really well. I just wanted to add a few points. One, just because this is in relation to a lot of the points that have come up, and I just wanted to reiterate this, that if there was potential for Jill Stein's campaign to actually win any of the states, let alone Michigan, that would have been fantastic, because not because to be honest, I think we need a new mass party for the working class, and I don't think that it's by itself would be enough. However, if that were the case, if we had the potential to win that would be absolutely historic, defeating the Democrat and the Republican candidate, especially in a year of genocide, by a left candidate. And I don't agree with this horseshoe theory of left and right and everything being the same. That's not accurate. The right-wing ideas are extremely dangerous, and the ordinary people who are prey to the right-wing ideas can be won over. But I don't think we can be blasé and say the right and the left are the same. That's absolutely not true. We need to build the left working class movement. We need to be deadly clear about that. But the point is that if that were possible, that would be absolutely historic, but that's not on the cards right now. We have to be very clear. And one of the central obstacles to this is the labor leadership. It's really important that Josie talked about, even to the extent that we can, as a small organization nationally, push through the recent Harris endorsement resolutions, even if we are not likely to win. That is extremely important, because we want to provoke a debate inside the labor leadership. Because why? Because the labor leadership, given that they are tied at the hip to the Democratic Party, they are a central obstacle to anything moving forward. Yesterday, I was at an interview with a left podcast, and they asked me, well, Jill Stein is not going to win. Why are you bothering with this? Shouldn't we just shouldn't we have a general strike? My response to that was, if we were in a position today to have a coordinated strike action, and that's something Workers Strike Back has called for, a coordinated one-day nationwide strike action of the whole labor movement to shut down the profit machine of U.S. capitalism, if we could do that right now, we should be doing that, and we should be calling for that. But on the left, it is not enough for us to say that that's needed in the abstract and call it good, say that we've done our duty. No, it's our job to point out why that is not happening right now. It is not going to happen. Because why? Because the labor leadership is not only tied to this sort of, let's make peace between the bosses and the workers kind of agenda, which is why the tentative agreement for the Boeing Workers is so lackluster, because they haven't used a fighting approach. But it's also because they are tied to other powers that be, like the Democratic Party. And the last thing the labor leadership wants right now is to, in any way, shape or form, cause embarrassment or shame to the Democratic Party. And so they is the single most crucial obstacle to any kind of fight back strike action. So we do need to be sober about the realities and understand what is our starting point. What are the openings we have in front of us that are concrete, not just talking about strike actions, but how can we move the agenda of the working class, of the anti-war movement forward concretely right now, so that we can get to the point where we do have something akin to a militant uprising inside the labor movement, which is what's needed of the rank and file, so that we can get to the type of strike action that's needed to actually end the war. And that is what ended the Vietnam War as well. It was massive strike actions throughout the nation, major movements, not only the anti-war movement, but many movements coalescing that forced a Republican president, Richard Nixon, to call for an end to the war, because it was real, almost like a revolutionary pressure against the establishment, against U.S. imperialism that made this happen. And so the reason we need to make as much as we can out of the Jill Stein campaign and then use it as the building blocks for the February conference is precisely in order to find every daylight, every sliver of daylight that we can to challenge the labor leadership. We are not only just challenging the democratic establishment, which we are, and yes, we are unabashedly and unapologetically calling for a defeat of Harris in Michigan. We don't apologize for that. But it is not only about the Democratic Party, it is about the labor leadership as well that has failed working people, that has failed the anti-war movement, and that has not chosen to use this historic moment as a red line. I really agree with Rizwan. Please pay attention to Rizwan's words here. This moment will be judged by history 20 years from now, 50 years from now, and what position we took today will be determined as the right thing or the wrong thing. And I think it's extremely crucial for us to take the correct position here, which is drawing the red line and saying no candidate or party of genocide gets our vote, which means neither Harris nor Trump. And I think we also have to be bold to people who constantly ask us, oh, doesn't that mean it's red Michigan, or doesn't that mean you're helping Trump elected? No, we are not responsible. As Calvin said and Karen said, we are not responsible for Trump getting elected. Trump and Trumpism are entirely at the doorstep of the Democratic Party. It didn't start today. It started with all the way, decades ago, including Clinton's betrayals of working people, poor people in the black community, then Obama's betrayals, both on the war question and on the healthcare question, Medicare for all question, which led to the opening for the Tea Party. And then now, as Dominic said, Biden's betrayals have now created the possibility of Trump 2.0. So it's entirely at their doorstep. And let's be clear also, in the swing states, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, these states are full of millions upon millions of working people. If Kamala Harris wanted to, she could wake up tomorrow, head to the debate, and say, I'm calling for $15 an hour minimum wage. I am returning all the money that the billionaires gave me, and I am ending the supply of arms to Israel. If she did that, then absolutely she would win the election hands down. But she is not going to do that. That's the point. If she loses the election, she is responsible for that. Let's not fall for this whole gaslighting that you're responsible for Trump. No, the Democrats are responsible for that.
And speaking of building a rank and file movement in the unions and across the labor movement, I'd like to invite Andre down to speak. Andre is a worker at Boeing, where more than 32,000 workers, we mentioned this earlier, more than 32,000 workers are fighting for a contract, and Andre is also a new member of Workers Strike Back, and the power of that level of work organization in the economy could be absolutely explosive. So Andre, go ahead.
Hi, thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me tonight. I'm just rank and file at the Boeing Union. I'm not a steward. I'm not part of the Boeing Union leadership per se. Oh, sorry. I'm a rank and file member of the Boeing IM 751. I get a little bit nervous when I speak in front of people. Just give me a few moments to. I'm very pumped up by a lot of things a lot of people have said here today. Regarding Boeing, there's lots of disruptions on the floor, but I'm not happy about the vote that was offered. I have not been part of this union I wasn't part of the previous vote, but I've spoken to lots of veterans, lost their pension for them. And one of our major demands for this vote, for this negotiation, was that we wanted our pension back. Not that I had one, but I was going to get one. the point of it, they were going to negotiate retroactive for everybody, so even people who never had it would get it. That was one of the key demands. It wasn't mentioned yesterday in the tentative agreement. They removed the AMPP bonus, which varied between 1% and 6%. It averaged about 3.7 over the few years I was there. And they replaced it with $2 an hour, which is effectively the same thing for our 401k. But that's a spit in the face for all these workers who've been there for so long, and some of them stayed longer than they wanted to try and get their pensions back. Even though there might be some nuggets in this tentative agreement to try and swing the vote, I'm in solidarity with those people that are fighting for their pension, and I would like a retroactive pension too. Secondly, they're also asking for a 40% wage increase. We were offered a 25% wage increase split over 4 years. So that ends up being a 28% increase, but you only see the benefits after 4 years. And then they ask for promises that the next Boeing airline would be built in Puget Sound. But this contract is only for 4 years, and based on the current events that's happened with Boeing, with the 737 program, with the 777X program, with other programs, the likelihood of a new program starting up in the next 4 years is virtually none from where I stand, from what I've seen. So that's pretty hollow that they could just delay that next program, so that wouldn't mean a thing if we got that together. Hesitant about the things I'm saying right now, but I may be targeted, but that's why I wear the shirt. Times of deceit. Telling the truth is revolutionary acts. And I used to believe in this person on the shirt, but I still believe in this set. And so my daughter was asking me why I was wearing more than one shirt. This is part of the reason why. I still believe in that, but I don't believe in it. Alright? And so, as a worker, I believe in this. I still believe in all of this. This bottom one is Palestine, first and foremost. I was drawn to this campaign through Kshama Sawant several years ago when she endorsed Bernie Sanders and I was once a woman endorsed Bernie Sanders, who's this? I was new to America, I'm an immigrant. I have 2 American daughters. My firstborn daughter is deceased at birth. 2 months later. Unfortunately, I didn't see her. Regarding the union, the union, maybe I should let it open for some questions, and that I might trigger my memory about a few things. There's a lot of people putting pamphlets around the things saying they're taking the legal duties off it, it out, crossed out the accept, and they said reject, and they crossed out the union, and they said Boeing wants you to accept, and they said we should reject. So people are on social media, they are sharing that we should vote yes for authorize the strike, and vote no to reject the contract. I don't know if we'll get that. I know that there's lots of people that were today back with their approach, their lunch, they were marching. That was the biggest marching I've seen so far. We'll be marching every week on Wednesdays, and then it's slowly been picking up. I have been trying to advocate for our union before Harris became the nominee. I advocated at some union meetings that our union should rescind the endorsement of Biden. I asked union meeting several months ago if they could rescind the endorsement of Biden. It's done by the major union. They actually did a vote 2023 before the election even started. So actually just between Trump and Biden, the union meeting. That's ridiculous. Nobody's even campaigned yet. And based on what's happened, there's no reason why we should put our name to it. It shouldn't happen in our name, just like it shouldn't be happening in the name of Jews. The reason why I feel so strongly about the people of Palestine is because of the advocacy that I got talking about the Palestinians through Jewish scholars, public figures to Ilan Patel, former Israeli General Michael Gilad, Noam Chomsky, etc., etc. Podcasting, Greenwald, Kshama, several advocating for against war, type of president. South Africa, so I was a beneficiary of apartheid as a kid, but I was also a victim of apartheid. Well, I was a made some friends when I was 8 years old. I was a little kid named Sam. He used to play with me because I was the youngest. They did all that. And I don't know if he ever joined the resistance against Israel, or he was killed by the police. We never found him. But through that, I learned about what we were living through in South Africa. I learned about the history of Nelson Mandela, Steve Biko, and the rest. They were in solidarity with Palestine all the way through their apartheid, through the times. And their honor, they've been proven correct. So, if anybody accuses me of supporting terrorists, it's the same thing that they said in South Africa about Nelson Mandela and Steve Biko. So. Who puts them on a pedestal now? Liberals will talk so highly of Nelson Mandela these days, but they'll forget the struggles that he went through and the things that he advocated for. If there's any other questions? Is there any questions for anybody who'd like to ask them at the end? I could try to answer them. Looks like I don't know. I don't know. I may have missed some of the communication from him. There's been so many updates. I've also been very busy at work, trying to prepare for the strike. working on extra overtime, so I'm expecting to probably go on strike and not have. So I've tried my best to stay with all the updates. Right. Yeah, and so I've noticed that in terms of even asking the union for some answers. I've asked them some simple answers in terms of what things that they were advocating for. They were advocating for 3 paid holidays, where you got offered 1 floating holiday. They were advocating for 3 holidays, MLK, Veterans Day, and Juneteenth. I was a little bit shocked when they announced that, because it said, did anybody ever consider May the 1st? And they said, no, it didn't even come up. And I was like, okay, that's very revealing from where I'm coming from. But nevertheless, I left it at that, because that had already been decided amongst them to votes. And they offered this floating holiday. But getting back to your question, I will try to bring that up and try to find out who they're negotiating with. I also asked them at one union meeting if our union could join with organizations like Workers Strike Back, and I was just told, no, we're not joining organizations like that. Like, who decided that? You just decided that now on Livestream? You didn't give it to the rank and file to give us a vote on it?
I think, we need to move on and wrap up the meeting, but I just wanted to say, Andre, to other IAM workers as well, Workers Strike Back completely has your back. We want to stay in close contact, close organization with you and other workers who are calling for a stronger contract, calling for no load, organizing for strike. So thank you.
Sorry, there was just one last thing. I just wanted to try and get the Workers Strike and starting a resolution to
Thank you so much, Andre. We have another update from Workers Strike Back member Jason. Jason has been in the fight to defend the $15 minimum wage, which recently just came under attacks from Joy Hollingsworth, who took over Kshama's District 3. This attack is coming from a Democrat on a all-Democrat city council. It has also been out on the picket line with Cherry Street workers. If you are a coffee drinker, you may have seen that your local place has been shut down recently, and Jason will be talking about why that is and what they're fighting.
Hi, I'm Jason Thiel. I'm a member of Workers Strike Back and a tech worker here in Seattle. It's already been mentioned this evening how Biden's broken promise of a federal $15 an hour minimum wage has undermined support for the Democrats in the presidential election. But the truth is, it's not just Biden. The Democrats at every level of government and in every part of the country are opposed to raising the minimum wage and are even going on the offensive to try to lower it. And now even so-called progressives like AOC are fully defending this thoroughly anti-worker party establishment, emboldening Democrats to attack workers with impunity. Seattle Democrats are attempting to fundamentally undermine Seattle's historic $15 an hour minimum wage victory, won by a movement of rank-and-file workers, activists, and socialists, and led by then City Council member Kshama Sawant and the 15 Now movement she helped launch back in 2013. Because of the $15 an hour victory that included cost of living adjustments, the minimum wage in Seattle is now nearly $20, the highest in any major city in the country. Undermining the minimum wage here would serve as a green light for pro-business forces everywhere to go on the attack against wages and living standards of working people more broadly. The Seattle City Council's first attack was an attempt to create a permanent sub-minimum wage tier for tipped workers, which would deny a desperately needed $3 raise to over 200,000 of the city's lowest paid workers at the start of the new year. Workers Strike Back mobilized workers and union members out to City Hall in opposition to that bill. Restaurant Workers United members also came and spoke up. We held a rally and spoke up publicly in opposition. We made it crystal clear that any Democrat who supported the anti-worker, anti-union attack deserves to be thrown out of elected office. It was because of our organizing and fighting back that Hollingsworth was forced to temporarily retract the bill. We have to be clear that we still have a long fight ahead of us, but this shows that when we fight, we can win. I don't agree with the labor leaders who keep claiming that it's about having private discussions with big business and the Democrats. No, it's about working people getting organized and fighting back. When she was forced to withdraw her bill, Hollingsworth stated publicly that this was not the end, and that she would be back with another quote-unquote balanced solution in this year's budget. But as working people in Seattle know all too well, the system is already wildly imbalanced against us. And any attack on our minimum wage victory will only deepen the chasm between us and the wealthy. In 2014, when Socialist Seattle City Council member Kshama Sawant's office was building the movement that won the original $15 an hour minimum wage, Democrats in the City Council opposed our movement on the basis that $15 an hour would allegedly hurt small businesses. Despite the fact that none of their dire warnings came true, they are now pulling out the same arguments to justify the new attacks on low-wage workers. Last week, at the first City Council meeting since the initial attack, Workers Strike Back members and several current and former small business owners pointed out that if these Democrats actually cared about small businesses, then they could easily increase the existing Amazon tax on the city's wealthiest businesses, the ones driving up rents and squeezing out small businesses, to create a small business assistance fund. The Democrats could also pass commercial and residential rent control and establish municipal banking and other progressive measures that would actually help small businesses without hurting the city's most vulnerable workers. When Kshama Sawant introduced all these measures during her time in office, they were rejected by all the Democratic council members at that time, and not a single council member has responded to them this time around. It's shocking that Hollingsworth was endorsed by the Martin Luther King County Labor Council and by large unions like UFCW, which represents grocery and retail workers. It's shameful that these Democrats took endorsements and donations from labor unions in their most recent elections and then turned around and are now attempting to carry out this anti-worker, anti-union legislation. Unfortunately, none of the leadership of these unions was in attendance at this past City Council meeting, and very few have made any public statements condemning the attacks. The Stranger newspaper recently reported that labor leaders are now in private meetings with big business and council Democrats trying to work out a compromise. Let's be clear, no attack on the minimum wage is acceptable. There is no compromise to be made with big business forces on this. There is only betrayal of working people by the Democrats. Labor leaders should be out here fighting publicly alongside Workers Strike Back and rank-and-file union members. We are sending a warning to the labor leadership. The only correct position is to fight against any and all attacks, and you can't do that in private meetings with big business and the Democrats. You have to be out here fighting with us. Rank-and-file workers, both unionized and non-unionized, need to get organized and build the pressure on labor leaders to stand unambiguously with us against any and all attacks on the minimum wage. Workers Strike Back has a sample resolution rejecting attacks on Seattle's minimum wage and pledging to withdraw support from any council member that votes for such an attack. Any union member can introduce this resolution in their union local, so come talk to a Workers Strike Back member afterwards if you're interested in doing so. The owner of the Cherry Street Coffee House shamefully spoke in favor of Hollingsworth's initial bill to deny a raise to tipped workers and threatened to permanently close down all 4 Cherry Street locations if the minimum wage did increase. Last Friday, Cherry Street workers went on strike with the support of Workers Strike Back members, shutting down all 4 store locations in a successful strike. They are demanding a living wage, no hours, cuts, or closures, and an end to sexual harassment. These workers are using their struggle against their own boss to fight against the proposed attacks on the minimum wage as a whole, and Workers Strike Back is using the Hands Off 15 campaign to help strengthen their specific fight. This is a great example of how solidarity is mutually strengthening in the workers' movement. The Stranger's reporting confirms that a new attack is being cooked up behind closed doors as we speak. We need to keep the pressure up and continue to get organized. If the City Council is able to get away with this attack on our historic minimum wage victory, it will embolden them to go after other pro-worker measures, including renters' rights victories like the ban on winter evictions. It will also send a message to other city councils around the country that they can get away with something similar. That's why it's so essential that workers in Seattle go all out to defeat this attack. Join Workers Strike Back and help us build for an action conference on September 15th at 2 p.m. alongside Cherry Street Workers United and Restaurant Workers United. The event will also be live streamed if you can't make it in person. When we fight, we can win.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you to everyone who came out today, both in person as well as on the live stream. The last time I checked, we still had over 300 people viewing between the different platforms in the live stream. It's just kept going up. I want to remind people, if you agree with what we're talking about here today, if you want to get involved with this movement, go to workersstrikeback.org. If you're here in person, talk to someone in the room, join Workers Strike Back, get involved to fight for these things, and sign up. We're going to have in-person action signups going around for the action conference happening on September 15th at 2 p.m. Pacific time, 5 p.m. Eastern. You can come in person, or for those watching on the live stream, we will have a live stream. Go to workersstrikeback.org. We're going to drop the link in the YouTube chat if you're watching on YouTube. Sign up to join us via live stream or come in person in Seattle to get organized, to stand with Cherry Street workers, and to fight back against this attack on the $15 minimum wage that City Council Democrats are leading. And this is, I would say to the people on the live stream, this is something that affects workers across the country, not just in Seattle. When we won the $15 minimum wage in Seattle in 2014, it inspired movements of workers across the country to fight for $15 in their cities. And we raised the wage across the country for millions of workers through those movements. And an attack on the Seattle minimum wage would open the doors to attacks in other cities, as well as further attacks to the victories that we've won in Seattle. So join that live stream, come in person on September 15th, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Central to get involved. Thank you all for coming. Stay in touch and talk to us after the meeting. Solidarity.